Are DACA's days numbered? This afternoon, the White House announced that a decision on its fate will come next week, next Tuesday to be exact. The program, which was put in place by President Obama, has allowed about 800,000 undocumented immigrants who arrived in the U.S. as children to stay and work without being deported. That news comes as Republican Senator Tom Tillis crafts some new legislation around immigration that would give those so-called dreamers a permanent path to residency, ending the need for DACA in its entirety. Going to come to you on this, Chief Immigration Specialist here on the specialist.
Golden opportunity on the part of the White House to prove to the rest of the Hispanic, to my community, that they like us and that the Trump administration is not anti-Hispanic. Why? Because these are the best of the best. These kids did not commit a crime. They didn't know that they were illegal. They are the perfect immigrants. They have been assimilated. They speak English better than you and I. They feel American. They are working. They are not criminals. They are not gang members. They are studying. And we may need them for future, to be the future labor force. So why should President Trump not take this advantage and give this signal to my community? We're with you.
Let me ask you just quickly, before we take it around the table, what would the political consequences be, though, Elvira, if it comes out on Tuesday? Immense,
because then the political consequences would be that the Republican Party is pushing the Hispanics over to the Democratic Party. 44% of Hispanics voted for Bush. 30% of Hispanics voted for Trump. 60% of Cuban Americans voted for Trump. We want to do business with the Republican Party, and I don't think they really understood this. And I've been saying it over and over again. And this is the perfect moment. I've always said that Trump could be to immigration what Nixon was for China. Prove, now that you have taken care of your base, prove that you are the president of all Americans, including the largest minority in the country, which is us.
Fastest growing, for sure. Let me ask you this, Mike. We know that on the campaign trail, President Trump campaigned around building a wall, talking about getting rid of the bad hombres, so to speak, as Elvira was pointing out, the rapists, the murderers, people that he feels are responsible for much of the drug, trade. But these dreamers are obviously not those individuals. So from your perspective, what would the consequences be if the White House does anything other than permit them to stay?
You know, I've always said this, especially in the ACA and then DACA, I believe President Obama's heart was in the right place. These are kids, all right? They were brought here. They're growing up here, just like Elvira said. They haven't committed a crime, and they're living the American dream. I kind of like Mike Kaufman's plan of keeping DACA in place 3 years and then let Congress renew it. And while we're in that 3-year, let's try to find a way to make sure that permanent residency and permanent citizenship is a real thing.
But we're not talking necessarily about citizenship. We're talking about a path to legality. Not only for them, for their parents, for the 11 million people. We need an immigration reform law that will solve the problem. DACA, sanctuary cities, the wall, NAFTA, DACA, whatever. Immigration.
But in that 3-year span, let's try to do that.
Sounds like amnesty.
That's path to legality, not citizenship.
No, but listen, when you're in favor of the rule of law, it doesn't mean you're anti-immigrant. It doesn't mean you're anti-Hispanic. I believe in the rule of law. And I think you should lock down that border. You should get rid of the rewards and incentives to be here illegal. I reject amnesty. That's what the president
Then we need to put E-Verify in place, because the same people, they're coming. Those illegal people are coming because there is a job waiting for them. Even if 50% of them have lived here for more than 15 years. Most of the people in the party are illegal. So I agree with you. But if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. If we're going to beat on the illegals, what about the business owners of America that are giving them jobs?
Absolutely. They should do that. That actually is the law.
No, it's not. It's voluntary. It's not mandatory.
But when you talk about DACA specifically, it's not just an emotional argument. It's also, it would cost, Cato estimates, $60 billion to actually go find all these people, arrest them, and deport them. And for what? Because they did what? Because they listened when their parents said, come over?
But I mean, what are you supposed to do?
Right, exactly.
Do you think that's going to happen? That would be political suicide.
It would be political suicide, and it's not economically smart either.
It will not happen, even if we have the money. Why? Because we as a country, we cannot afford to start.
If this was so important to the Democrats, why did the president do this when he was President Obama the first 3.5 years? They had the House and Senate presidency. They didn't do that.
I agree.
The president cannot just unilaterally do this. That's why we're in the problem that we are. This program expires. But you can't do that. You got to go through Congress. If you want to change the law, you got to change the law. The president just can't unilaterally do it.
But you just said the liberals lied to us. The Democratic Party has been pulling this wool over the Hispanics for decades.
But now the Republicans are in charge.
Well, now the
right?
Republicans are in charge.
I think what the president will do will have some glide path over the next 6 months so that Congress can figure out some sort of reasonable solution. But we still got to lock down that border. I think the president's in a great position to actually negotiate something good, lock down that border, get rid of
the border issue, which I think we all agree sovereignty is important, is different, though, than what to do with DACA.
Absolutely.
But you can't, if you haven't locked down the border, you can't be moving and saying, hey, let's give you more incentive to come across here illegally.
You may lock the border, but you have 11 million people living in here. What are you going to do with them?
You've got to get rid of the incentives.
They won't fix it. They won't fix it in 6 months, though. They'll need a long time.